Okay, well, I think today is going to be another casting day. The video I just released to you showed me shaking out the first half of the gearbox pattern for the sand Muller. And this is it with the sprue and risers cut off. And weight on this ends up being about 17 or 18 pounds, something like that. And we'll lose another half pound, something like that when we machine out the bosses and clean up all this other stuff. But anyway, I'm happy with that casting. That'll give me a good gearbox half. I got very little shrinkage in it, if any. The pattern's not a perfect pattern, but for this big, this will make a great gearbox pattern. So anyway, there's the first one. Pretty much ready to be machined. Now, the way Steve Chastain cast this, he cast his bores, or he cast a center out of these bosses. So we had something to bolt to. I'll take and just probably take a hole saw, set it up in the mill and cut those out, and still use the same hold downs on the milling machine or plane or wherever we sell. It'll be at least on the milling machine because we've got to drill and tap it and put some dowel pins in and things like that. So anyway, that was it. I thought you'd like to see the setup. Now, this is my Mickey Mouse little crucible here, my Mickey Mouse big crucible. And this is it. This is a hunk of stainless steel that I got from the local surplus supplier, one of my metal suppliers that handles a bunch of surplus in their back lot. So I got this. It was a piece of stainless steel pipe, and it is, let me grab a tape measure. OD on it is about 8.5 inches, and it is 8 inches tall. So that will just barely fit in my furnace. Downside to it, it's hard to get the furnace lit and burning right because this takes up so much of the internal. Once it's lit, well, you're fine. But I had to monkey around a little bit. I've got the technique now for it, but this will get used probably one more time, is probably all, maybe sometime in the future. But now, there's always a talk about using steel crucibles, and it's a bad idea and it's dangerous and you're going to use it. This is just standard pipe. It's nothing, it looks like it's about 1/8 inch wall on it. And what I did is I've drilled it and then welded in I think these are 5/8 pins with a washer on the inside. I just welded them so they're secure. And I formed a little bit of a pouring basin, or a pouring spout. So my lifting tongs consist of these right here. And the way it goes in is I want to pour going away from that, so I can hook them in right here, and it's easier once it's full and in the furnace. Goes in like yay, lift it up. I've got the normal little pouring shank that I use with my other steel crucible. I lift it, and of course I'm backhanded here. This should be in my other hand and I can hook it and pour it. So that's the setup for it. Now, people talk about how dangerous these are, and you should never use a steel crucible. If you've got the option for silicon carbide crucibles or clay graphite crucibles, yes, that's the industry standard. That's probably safer. That's probably the way to go. I've given my reasons why I like a steel crucible, and in some instances I think they're better than a graphite crucible, depending on how the guys are pouring and if you're learning and what you're doing and anything. So I won't go into that. But anyway, we talk about burning them out. Now, this has only had one heat on it. I ran it up. My pouring temperature was about 1200 degrees according to my pyrometer. And this has got about, probably an inch around the front side of the crucible. Flames come in on this side, and you can look at this, and I can still see the grinder marks down underneath where I ground the slag off when I welded the base on. This is just a mild steel base plate. It was 1/4 inch plate. Welded it on there, but I don't see any deterioration whatsoever on this. Now, standard steel pipe will form a crust over it, or as it's burning off. But this one, for the 2 melts that it'll get, this one shows no signs of that at all, no scaling or anything on it. It'll give me another melt out of it without any issues at all. So it's something to consider. It's one of those hard and fast things where I don't believe in hard and fast rules. So when people say you should never do that, I disagree with that. So anyway, that's what it is. When I filled this, and I haven't figured out the area of it, I did not put full heat to this right off the bat because this was the first time I melted in it. I kind of brought temperature up a little bit slower than I normally would. Once it got red hot and was glowing, why then I made sure I had aluminum melting in there before I really put the heat to it hot, just because I didn't want to burn through, where the aluminum will absorb some of that heat, so you don't get it transfers it off of the face, you know. So anyway, a little bit easier that way. Melt time was a little bit over an hour is what it took me to melt the full crucible. I had it full to probably within 1.5 inches of the top, and in my little constrained space here and the way I poured it, I was a little bit nervous pulling it. Now I could, coming out of the furnace, and I'll show this pour if everything goes okay. I think I'm going to ram up molds this morning, or ram the other half of this up this morning. It is safe as long as you're careful with what you're doing. Now, from the camera angle it's at, why it's going to look like I'm dumping it right over the top of my foot. I'm not. I'm swinging it out in the way. So I'm staying clear of this when I pull it out of the furnace and pour it. But anyway, neither here nor there. You'll see that. It's a little bit daunting to pull probably about 30-35 pounds worth of molten metal out of the crucible, or out of the furnace, with it that high. Now I had it there to that level. The crucible and the tongs weigh about 15 pounds. So I figure about 60 pounds, 50, 60 pounds, something like that I was having to lift out, swing around, bring them out, set it on the ground, reposition myself, and then pour it. So that's kind of the plan for the day. I'm going to go ahead and show you ramming up this mold. You know, I'm going to run it through at 4, 5, 6 times speed. You know, there's no sense, it gets boring after a while. But you can see the way I've rammed these molds up, and if everything goes well, why, I'll leave the camera here and let it run while we pour. So anyway, let me get reset up, and we'll take you along for the ride. Well, we're going to try and set this down on the upper half. Unfortunately, the only thing you're going to see is my ass until we get it down there, but that's the way it is. Okay. Okay. Mold's rammed up, back together. I'm going to stick some screws in it. I'm going to form up one of my little Dixie cup sprues. I'm not worrying about risers or anything, just on the sprue itself, just so I've got something to aim at. And you saw I left a little bit of a depression in the middle, or, you know, didn't fill the mold all the way around. If I have a spill, something overflows, something runs beyond where it's supposed to, it's not going to run out and down the edge of the flask. It's going to hold there in the center. So I figured there was enough sand there when I cast the first one yesterday, and it held up fine, so I didn't bother to ram all the way. Plus it makes it just a little bit lighter for me. So anyway, I'll go ahead and do those. I'm going to fire off the furnace and get it going, and then I'll try and bring you back so you can see the pour. You're probably not going to get much of a view from right there, but I'll show you you'll be able to see the contents of the crucible and how it does pour and everything. So might be a little bit interesting for you. I'll give you as good a view as I can. So anyway, we'll bring you back when we get ready to pour this. I'm going to fire off the furnace here in just a couple minutes, and it'll take just hour or a little bit more to probably bring it up to temperature. I've been checking it with my little pyrometer, and like I say, just about 1200 degrees is where I want to pour this. That's where I poured the one yesterday, the other half, and it flowed real well. I didn't get shrinkage in it that's even noticeable as near as I can tell, and I'm real happy with that. So hopefully everything will go well with this one, and we'll bring you back in a few. Okay, looks like I got it. I think it filled good. I'm going to assume this is a good casting, and I will shake this one out in a bit, and we'll see what it looks like. So this should just be an exact mate to the other one that we already poured, and I probably won't show the shakeout on this one since we showed that on the last one. I'll show you finished product. Alright, well, I got my mess cleaned up again for the rest of the day. So both halves cast. Let me bring down here and show you. A little more shrinkage in this one I did today, but I will attribute it to being cast quite a bit hotter. Actually, it was about 100 degrees hotter than the other one. I cast the first half at about 1200 degrees, and this one was a little over 13. And you know, I just let it go a little bit long. It'll match up pretty good all the way around there. I'm pretty happy with that. So what I think is going to happen, I got a little shrinkage in this area. Now the other thing other than casting it a little bit hotter was I went back and filled the sprue out on the first one after I'd initially cast it, and let it just set for a few seconds to solidify a little bit, and then I topped off the sprue. So I think that that helped a little bit too. A little bit of shrinkage right in through here, just a little bit on the inside. Not going to make any difference. Most of this will get machined away, and we'll be fitting a hub down into it. These have not been machined; they're still solid, but they'll be machined down in there and bolted to it. I think there's 4, 5, 16 bolts that holds that on, and that's our bearing carriers for both these bosses, top and bottom. So that's what they look like. I just rough ground off the sprues and risers on these. I've still got to go back and finish cleaning up the insides of them. But there's insides. This is where our big gear will sit, our 112 tooth. Will sit right there. And then our 17 tooth will sit right down here. We've got a couple of these with, this one's already got a hub on it, and I believe that's probably a 1-inch hub, so we'll probably use that one. Have to do something for a hub here. And then out one side goes this, and this is a, what is this? This is marked without me having to count the teeth or go back to the book and remember what it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20. It's a 37, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, through 1 through 2. Well, 32. And this has got a welded in hub. I don't know if this is a hub that I did or it's pretty scraggly looking, but I'm sure it'll work. So there's our, I believe that's a 50, size 50 chain. This is a 35. So that'll be the next thing, is to machine these out. I think what I'm going to do is I'll lay these out, go back and cut an initial size hole in the boss. Then we're going to, I believe, back these with a piece of something other to hold them flat off the bottom. And we'll probably use that as a reference surface. And I think I'll probably go to the planer and just deck off the top of these. We've got lots of room in between. I can take off quite a bit. I think Steve Chastain said he cut his down to 1.5 inches, and that may even be a little bit too, you know, maybe 1.25 inches or something. We'll see how it goes. But I think I'll probably set it up on the planer to shade those. You know, it's not a bad fit, but those are mating surfaces. Then we'll go back and lay it out. We've got 2 dowel holes and what is there, 7 or 9 holes around the outer perimeter that bolt it together. So that will happen, and then in 1/2 to mount it to suspend it underneath the Muller drum, why there's 6 holes, I believe, through this rib and this rib, I believe is what they are, 3 in each one. And there's a center hole, and then equally, or whatever the distance is to the outside of them. So that's going to be the next thing. And once we get that part of it done, I'll probably have to go ahead and at least machine the outsides of those hubs before I get too carried away cutting the inside bores, or the final size bores on those, which I guess really isn't a big issue. We'll go ahead and do the 2 halves, get them bolted together, and then we can go back and do the final sizing and distance on our 2 bosses on top and bottom. So anyway, that's the update for the day. Hopefully you found it interesting. comments, suggestions, leave them in the comments section for me below. And as always, thanks for taking the time to watch, guys.